how I think about AI tools is don't go looking for a solution in search of a problem, right? A lot of this stuff is cool. You see the demos on Twitter and LinkedIn, and you see the hype videos, and you see a bunch of people talking about how they're using it, and you feel like you're missing out. But if it's not solving a constraint that you have, you're not missing anything, because that's not actually going to help the business grow.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode here on the Multifamily Wealth Podcast. Joining me this week is a repeat guest. He's here for the third time, Mr. Peter Lohmann of RL Property Management. Peter has been a killer guest in the past. His last two episodes, I should say his first two episodes, both the episodes that we've done have been some of our most highly listened to episodes on the podcast feed. And I think it's because we get extremely tactical in our episodes. Peter actively operates a property management company that manages over 700 units. He loves to get into the weeds and actually talk about, like, tactically speaking, what drives results in his PM company. And then I always get a kick out of us having kind of PM ownership related conversations as well, in terms of what he's seeing behind closed doors, actually operating a property management company, in regards to what's going on in the industry, how he optimizes communicating with owners, how he grows the business itself. And in this episode, what we're going to spend a lot of time on is how he's adopting AI into the day-to-day operations within his PM company. And we get really tactical here. We talk about, like, conceptually how to think about adopting AI tools within your business. But then we also get into the tactics and the nitty-gritty of, like, these are some things that you can systematize within your business today in regards to bringing AI into your business and your operations a little bit more heavily. So this is a great episode. We dive into a whole bunch of really exciting topics and we nerd out. And I know that's what folks want out of the Multifamily Wealth Podcast. So be sure to give this one a listen from start to finish. And if you haven't already, please leave the show a rating and review. Helps the show get noticed by more folks and helps the show grow fundamentally, which is what we're trying to do here on the podcast, is help more multifamily investors start, build, and scale their businesses. So thanks as always for listening, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode. Joining me for the third time, and the first time in over 2.5 years, I think, is the last time you were on the show, Peter.
Yeah.
Sometime in mid-2023, but it's been a while, and a lot's happened in, I think, both of our businesses, and then in the just real estate industry at large, broadly speaking, since that time. And then maybe I'll say in the world too, with AI becoming a fun little Google search replacement to becoming how people are starting to build their business. And I think we're going to talk about a whole bunch of fun stuff here over the next 45 minutes to an hour. So I'm pumped to reconnect and chat. But why don't we give everybody a refresh here on your background? How'd you get into the real estate business, the property management business, and what's your business look like today?
Yeah, happy to do that. So my background is engineering, actually. So I have a degree in electrical engineering, and I worked as a control systems engineer for about 5 years right out of college. During that time, I started buying up single-family rental homes with a partner, and he and I just bought a handful while we were both working our engineering jobs. And we kind of got sick of doing our day jobs and ended up starting a property management company. So in 2013, I quit my engineering job and started RL Property Management. At the time, we had no clients, no units, nothing other than just the small handful of units that we owned. And I've been at it ever since. So what is that, 14 years or something? And we grew it from zero. Today, we manage about 750 units total. That's a mixture of single family and small multifamily. We have a big team here. We're based in Columbus, Ohio. And I've gotten involved in a few other things as well. So my partner and I, in the management company and in the real estate we own, we also own a small engineering business now that he runs. And I've been doing a bunch of media stuff here more recently. So I have my own podcast and a newsletter all about residential property management. And then the most recent thing is Crane, which is a paid community for property management business owners. And that's been really gaining some traction here. That's only about 2.5 years old. So that probably wasn't even started last time you and I talked. It's been crazy. But yeah, so all things property management, really. I mean, I live and breathe residential property management all day, every day. I love the industry. I love the people. I love working on tinkering in my business and then writing and talking about what works, what didn't work, and what we're doing. So yeah.
Love it. Yeah. And, I'll be the first to say there's a lot of poor newsletters out there. A lot of people kind of just throw together a newsletter for the sake of doing it because they know they should be doing something over email. But I actually, yours is maybe my favorite one that I really enjoy. So I highly
Well,
recommend
thanks,
that
man.
everybody goes and subscribes, even if you're not, a property management business owner. I think just if you're in real estate, there's a lot of value in keeping up to date with some of the trends that you're identifying in property management, some of the things that you're doing in your business, which we'll link that in the show notes. And I think, yeah, the last time I don't think you had started Crane when we chatted. I think maybe you had just started, or maybe it was you were getting it off the ground, but it was
Hmm.
certainly not what it is now. And just kind of vicariously through my business partner Ryan, who I know Ryan Weiss, who's a member of Crane. I know we've gotten a ton of value out of it for our property management business.
That's awesome. Love that.
That said, let's talk about like the actual tactics of property management here for a second, knowing that many of the listeners are either operating their own properties, small to mid-sized multifamily, or they're working with a PM and they're by extension involved in asset management of some kind. We're recording this last few days of, end of February 2026 here. What are some areas of focus within the property management company right now as it relates to actually operating the real estate that you're managing in terms of like what are some of the things that are sticking out to you as like a priority within the property management company right now?
Yeah, there's two things really that are top of mind for me right now. The first one is I'm always thinking about what's my constraint. So I read this book called Theory of Constraints by this guy named Eli Goldratt years and years ago, and it's never left my brain. He talks about, I mean, the book is about how to optimize like a factory, like with materials and big equipment and machines and factory workers. Like, how do you get more product through that factory floor? How do you run it more efficiently? But there's actually a ton of takeaways from that apply to knowledge work, even a property management company or a real estate business. The main takeaway is you need to identify what is the one thing that's preventing me from whatever your goal is, growing, making more money, whatever your current constraint is. You need to first identify what that is, and second, ruthlessly focus on that and only that until it's no longer the constraint. One of the problems with property management and real estate is you just have so many things to do and you get pulled in so many different directions, whether it's like city nonsense or tenant problems, evictions, leasing issues, maintenance and repairs, turnovers, finding your next deal. You're dealing with vendors, you're dealing with investors, you're dealing with just you could fill days and days without getting a chance to actually focus on the most important things. And so, this practice of what is my constraint right now and let me focus on that has been very impactful for me and my businesses. So that, and we can talk more about that. That's the first thing. The second thing is we at RL Property Management, we've been running our company in what's called a departmental organizational style basically since the beginning. What that means is that everyone at the company has a really specific function that they do for all of the properties that we manage. So rather than having like Tom, Dick, and Susie each having 50 doors and they do everything for those doors, they do leasing, they do evictions, they do rent collection, they do maintenance, all that. Instead, we have like Tom, who does accounting for all 750 doors, Susie, who does leasing for all 750 doors, etc. So that's departmental. That's how we've been organized, but we're right in the middle of shifting over to what it's called like a pod hybrid style, where we still have departments, but rather than property owners dealing with 5 different people, depending on what the nature of their question is, every single property owner gets assigned to a specific property manager. That property manager is their primary point of contact. And the property manager does all of the communications and all of the contracts, like the leases and the management agreements. And so they know everything that's happening with their owners' properties, even though they may not be the ones who are doing all of the tasks, because we're still have that departmental setup on the back end. So this is brand new for us. So it's been a big area of focus. We're getting some early feedback from property owners and even from tenants that they're really liking this setup. So that's kind of my focus right now, is those 2 areas, is what's my constraint and this big reorg that we did.
Yeah, I got to imagine, and I think you've spoken about this, whether it's like LinkedIn newsletter, different mediums, where part of the challenge of providing customer service to an owner clients as a property manager is they want to just reach out to like the person that is the manager of their property
Yep.
when they are want to check on a unit turn, when they want to check on leasing a unit. They have an issue with a bill and they see they're unhappy with how much was billed for,
Yep.
snow plowing or whatever. They want to reach out to Tom or Sue or whoever to get that question answered versus if I have, a maintenance question or a leasing question or a property management tenant resident issue question to have these different people. It's certainly something that we've tried to figure out best in our property management company, but I think it's really challenging. And I think the way that you've described it is accurate, where you can try and train an owner client as much as you possibly can to go to these different sources for this
Yeah.
information. They're just going to want the cell phone number. They're going to want to text whoever they want to talk to.
Exactly.
And I think that's
Yeah.
like very true for like these small, we use mom and pop here all the time, like the small, unsophisticated or mom and pop owner, landlord who's got a building or two versus the really sophisticated type of client. And it seems like you
Yeah.
guys are dealing with the same thing.
We had this welcome letter we give to all of our new owners, and the first page would be like, for leasing, call this number. For maintenance questions, this is the email. Like there'd be like a whole menu that, and then like they would call the wrong thing, and like my team would be annoyed. Like, well, didn't they read the letter? Why are they calling me? Don't they know to? Right? It's like, no, they're not going to read that. They're not going to remember that. Just
Yeah.
like you said, the way to distill this down is people don't want to call their property management company. They want to call their property manager. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a very subtle distinction, but it's worlds apart in terms of the experience for the property owner. And again, for the tenant as well. A tenant, like, what's the dream scenario for a tenant? And I have a couple people who work for me who have described this. I'm like, hey, I'm curious, like, who do you rent from? Like, who's your landlord? And we have people in our office who are like, oh, it's, some of them will be like, oh, it's this management company, it's that management company, big names around town. And you go, oh, how do you like it? I'm like, it's okay. I hate the portal. It's hard to pay rent, like, maintenance requests, whatever. Then you talk to other people in our office and you're like, who's your landlord? And they're like, oh, it's just this old couple. Joe is his name. I'm like, who's Joe? I don't know. He has like 3 duplexes. Okay, great. Well, how do you contact, like, what's the process to pay rent or if you have an issue? And they're like, oh, no, I just text him.
Mm-hmm.
I just text Joe. He's on iMessage. He's on, so anytime I have an issue, I just text him. And I'm like, wow, that's actually the dream, right? That's from a tenant perspective, that is the ideal setup, right? Mom and pop landlord, they just text anytime there's an issue, whether it's maintenance, rent question, lease renewals, anything. So I've been thinking a lot about that experience and how can we replicate that type of experience for our owners and for our tenants as closely as possible to make it as frictionless and as simple as possible to do business with us. Right? If you don't know what to do in your business, just make it easier for people to do business with you. Only good things are going to happen from that.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. It's funny. I think I can't remember where I saw this, but and it's not even really like an original idea. I think a lot of people would agree with this, but the best and worst landlords, I think, are, or I should say, let me say this: the local. I own a couple of duplexes, or I've got a duplex and a condo that I rent out. And
Yeah,
it's just the landlord or property manager, Joe, is the one who's just texting back and forth with the tenants, is significantly overrepresented in the best and then the worst landlords. It's like
agreed.
it can be the best one, or it can just be the guy's like, spends 2 weeks bidding out a water heater because he wants to save $60
Yeah,
on the unit, right? Like there's examples, but I think you can pull from the good version of it in a lot of
totally.
different areas within your business. All right, quickly shifting gears because I think this is like something that's really, I mean, this has been a focus for us for years now. I mean, and it wasn't. By contrary, like for the first 5 years of me being in the business, at least from 2016 to 2022, that 6 year stretch of it's nice when a tenant renews, but if they don't, it doesn't matter. We're going to go ahead and just lease it at a far more competitive rent, and
Hmm.
it's more than going to pay for the turn cost. Like that was the market for a long time, really up until the last couple of years. I feel like
We've never had that, so that sounds amazing, dude. Like,
maybe
congrats
that's
on
the
that
greater
those years.
Boston, New England thing, right? Where
Yeah,
it's always been a hot market from a rent growth standpoint, more so than the Midwest. But it was like, all right, tenant stayed for 2 years at 1,500. We sent them a renewal at 16. They left, and we're like, all right, that's fine. We're gonna spend 5-6 grand turning it. We're gonna lease at 1,700, and it was accretive to the value of the building itself, and it wasn't
totally.
the end of the world if your renewal rate suffered. The last couple of years, obviously, that's been totally different where rents have flatlined, if not come down. And everyone cares more about renewing tenants right now. And I still think that's the case here, even in 2026. When you think about renewals, what drives renewals as a property manager and within a property management company? Like, what do you guys focus on to max out that number?
Yeah, there's a few things we do, and renewals are very important to us as well because, I mean, although we don't own these properties, so the rent money doesn't go to us, what we know is that property owners are way more likely to churn out and stop using us if they have a vacancy or when they have a vacancy. So a property owner with an occupied unit almost never discontinues management. It's when they get notice that their tenant is moving out is when they decide, oh, well, maybe I'll sell it or maybe I'll self-manage or whatever. So anything we can do to reduce our tenant turnover, basically increase our renewals, is very helpful for us. Not only because turns are hard and disruptive, but because owners are likely to churn out during that time. So, we got a bunch of different things that we do to try to increase the likelihood of getting a renewal. And it all starts before they even move in. Because there's been a lot of studies showing that renters make a decision about renewal. They're highly influenced within the first 72 hours of move-in. They're already thinking about, do I like this place? Do I like this landlord? Do I like this location? How comfortable am I? How does my spouse feel? Are my kids, so all of these things is right within a few days, they're already thinking this isn't what I thought it would be. I'm already going to, a year from now, we're not going to renew, right? So that move-in experience is important, making sure that we don't just slap lipstick on a pig during the turn, but we actually make it, nice, and we take care of all the function, make sure everything's functional in the unit. That's our rule. If it's there, it has to function. Whether that's, of course, appliances, but windows and doors and locks and everything has to work that's in the property. And it also has to be hotel clean is the language that we use. I got that from Mark Cunningham in Denver. Hotel clean. So when and owners sometimes whine about this, right? Well, I cleaned it on my way out. It's fine, blah, blah, blah. It's just a rental. It's no, dude, this place needs to be nice. This needs to be hotel clean at move in because that's the expectations in today's day and age. So if you kind of get all this stuff right, what ends up happening is the tenant moves in and they like the experience, right? The key worked. You ever have somebody, you give them the wrong key and they show up with a moving truck, they can't get in? That's not a good experience. The key works, they get in, everything's working, power's on, hot water works, everything's clean. It's great, right? So that is very important. I really like Ray Hespin, the CEO of Property Meld. We use Property Meld at our company to help coordinate between vendors and tenants and owners and to handle repairs. And they have a ton of data because they have millions of units on the platform. And they've released a study late last year that showed that the likelihood of a tenant renewing is closely correlated with the number of maintenance requests they had during the first 90 days. If you can set up the unit in such a way that they have no maintenance requests within the first 90 days, your likelihood of getting a renewal from that tenant goes way up. So we focus on, I coined this phrase, the no meld 90, because a meld is like a work order. So if we can do a no meld 90, first 90 days of move-in, no melds, that's a great outcome for the owner. It's a great outcome for us, and it's a great outcome for the resident because they're having a great experience. So, the more work you can do on that turn to make sure everything is perfect, whether you need checklists or one final walkthrough or whatever you need to do, that's a big focus for us, and I think really contributes to renewals, in a big way.
Yeah.
Outside of that, by the time the renewal time comes up, your fate is mostly sealed. You're not going to talk a resident into renewing if they've already made up their mind. You can try and discount, of course, you can try and do incentives by we'll give you a new carpet or whatever. You can try that stuff. My experience is fairly limited success. The other thing you can do on the front end is offer longer lease terms. So you can offer 2, even 3-year leases to folks. And you can do this a couple different ways. You can bake in small increases, or you could even say, hey, if you sign a 2 or a 3-year lease, we'll keep your rent flat for that whole period as kind of like an incentive to get them to sign a longer lease term. And sometimes tenants will say, oh, well, are you going to give me a discount if I sign a 3-year lease? I'm like, yeah, that is the discount. You're not getting an increase. So yeah,
Yep.
that's the discount. So those are some of the things that we think about.
Yeah, that's all really helpful. We never used to do this really. It was just kind of a very simple renewal process. We offer the 12 months regardless of when the lease is expiring, whether it's November or March or July. And what we've started doing differently in our business is offering staggered lease terms on renewal with maybe slightly different prices. And part of that is to get us on a more advantageous lease cycle, which, in the
Yeah,
Northeast for us is like if we're leasing between November to February, it's just the interest is way different and the
same.
traffic is way different than if it's May to September, right? So it's like we want as many leases turning in that time frame as we possibly can. Maybe not all in the same month, but at least in the same 6 month period. So if we have a tenant who's coming up and their lease is expiring on December 1st or, the end of November, we're going to really push to get them on an 18-month lease to get them out
Yeah,
to early summer, right? And we're going to incentivize them price wise, and we're going to recommend that the owner client that we're managing the property for like understands the value in doing that. Because part of that's educating the owner, which I'm sure you guys probably deal with maybe every once in a while on these multi-year leases. But that's such an easy lift, and I think people got away from it because they didn't like the idea of locking a unit up at a rent for multiple years, knowing that rents were kept running and running and running for a long time. But that's not really the market environment we're in right now. So you gotta change and adjust.
absolutely. We even do that same thing on the initial lease term. So if we do have a vacancy in January, we'll try and get them to sign a 14 or 15-month lease. And same thing in, November. Sometimes we'll have someone in November, we'll have them sign like a 10-month lease, and then we'll handle that at renewal because then they're renewing at a better time. So yeah, those are great options as well. I like doing that stuff.
Let's talk about artificial intelligence, as
Hmm.
we do many,
What's
many.
that? I haven't heard much
Yeah,
about
yeah.
it.
I don't know if anyone's been paying attention, but apparently the world is changing rapidly under our feet. To kind of set maybe the basis for this conversation, or to kind of frame it in a different way, I think every day over the last like 3 or 4 days, I open up Twitter, or I should say X now, and I think Claude or Anthropic is releasing like a brand new feature for Claude, for example, or there's a new AI startup that is launching a release video, and we're looking at it going, wow, that looks really interesting.
Yeah.
And then all of these different softwares that we already use in our business are like, well, we're doing this now, whether it's Notion or Monday.com or whatever. And I think that it's intimidating for folks who are not truly plugged into this to understand what's happening right now in the, I should say in the marketplace, and then throughout the call it AI landscape, which is a very broad way, I guess, of describing it. But what I want to ask you is maybe one, if you want to share a couple of the tools that you're using, I mean, by all means, feel free to share them. But I think the number two, and maybe this is what's more helpful to folks, is how you think about adopting AI within your business, maybe just conceptually or like foundationally, maybe, the decisions you're making in your business. How do you start to think about how AI plays into
Yeah.
making those decisions? And then if you want to share some tools, by all means. But I think that's something that a lot of folks are going to get a lot out of right now.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned folks kind of feel like they can't keep up if they're not plugged in. I'm pretty plugged in and I have a lot of trouble keeping up. So I think if you're feeling like you can't keep up, you don't know what's going on, you don't know what the latest tools are, you don't know what the latest capabilities are, you don't really know how to implement it in your business, welcome. Hey, come on in
Yeah.
because we're
Join the
all
club.
feeling that way. I can tell you, anyone who claims to have it all figured out right now, it's hogwash because these tools are changing week by week, and the cutting edge is changing week by week. So it's part of my job is to keep up with this stuff because I write for the industry and I speak and people expect me to know like what's going on, and I can barely have a sense of what's happening. It's overwhelming. So first, I just want to reassure folks that you're not alone, and it's a lot. I'm 40. I turned 40 last year. I lived through the great financial crisis. I grew up without any technology. Like we didn't have a computer or anything. Now we have cell phones in our pockets. I've seen a lot of technological change in my lifetime. I've never seen anything like this. The pace that it's happening here in the last, 6 months or so, especially. So that's just kind of to set the scene a little bit. The fun thing about owning a business is you get to play a little more with some of these tools than you do if you're just an employee at a big company where everything's locked down. So I get the opportunity to not only try out things in my company, but speak to other property management business owners like in Crane and see what they're doing and how they're implementing it. Like there's all kinds of AI discussions happening inside Crane, which is this paid community I run for property management business owners. We have a whole thread about OpenClaw, and people are chiming in with how they're doing it and how they're getting it set up and how they're using it at their company. And so I love being able to sort of stay on the bleeding edge by plugging in that way. In terms of what we're actually doing and how I think about adopting, you asked about how I think about adopting AI in my business. I come back to that theory of constraints. So you really shouldn't be messing around with AI tools to solve non-constraints at your business, whether that's a real estate business, property management business, any type of business. For example, just to make this kind of real, at my company, our constraint right now is new owner leads. Our operations are solid, even with this reorg that we just did, maybe especially after the reorg. We have capability to take on probably 20 to 40 doors a month, new owner doors, but we're only getting maybe 15-ish, 15 to 20. And so the constraint right now to my business, to growing and making more money and everything else, is owner leads. So I am not going to spend much, if any, time messing around with AI tools that aren't going to result in me getting more owner leads, because that would be a waste of time, because that's not the constraint. So in some ways, this feels a little, it's like, oh man, like I don't get to play with this new thing. So it's kind of like, in a way, you're like bummed out. But in another way, it's kind of freeing, because it gives you permission to say, I don't care about any of that stuff, because it's not going to help me get more leads. If it's going to help me get more leads, I'm going to look into it. If it's not, I'm not going to. So that's how I think about it. And, I have a couple different businesses that I run, and they have different constraints. And so I still get to play with a lot of different tools, because, we're attacking different problems within our businesses. So that's how I think about AI tools, is don't go looking for a solution in search of a problem, right? A lot of this stuff is cool. You see the demos on Twitter and LinkedIn, and you see the hype videos, and you see a bunch of people talking about how they're using it, and you feel like you're missing out. But if it's not solving a constraint that you have, you're not missing anything, because that's not actually going to help the business grow. Now, coming back to our actual constraint, which is owner leads, I'll tell you about what we are doing with AI to solve that problem. An issue that you have in property management is you only ever hear from people who are just about ready to make a switch, right? Owner lead calls or comes in through the website, finds you on Google, whatever. Like, hey, I'm interested in learning more about your property management services. I just bought an investment property, or I hate my current property manager, or whatever. So that's great. We love those, right? Of course, we close those all day long. Problem is, that's only about 3% of the market. 97% of property owners, rental owners, are not searching for a new property manager, or are not searching for a property manager at all. How do you reach those folks? How do you get in touch with them so that you can convince a certain percentage of them to sign up? Because if you're just relying on the inbound leads, well, let me tell you, those people are contacting everybody. They went right down through Google, the top 3, 5, 10 results they got. They reached out to all those people. So they're having conversations with your competitors. So in order to grow your lead flow beyond a certain point, once you've kind of saturated all the normal channels, you're going to hear from just about everybody who's looking, because you're going to show up in all the normal places. But if you want to have conversations above that and really drive lead flow above what's just coming from inbound, you have to somehow get in touch with these folks. So here's what we're doing. I set up my OpenClaw, and I wrote about this in my newsletter. I set up my OpenClaw, which is this new agentic AI thing that everyone's hyped about. I told it, hey, here's a competitor's website, another property manager in town. I want you to monitor their rental listings for stale listings. Any rental listing that's been listed on their site for more than 28 days, I want you to send me a message as soon as that happens. And I want you to look up the owner on the Franklin County Auditor's website. Here's the link. Pull the owner's information and use publicly available skip tracing tools to try and get me some contact information for that property owner. This is mind-blowing, because I was trying to set up this tool using other tools. I was trying to set up this process, this workflow using other tools a few months ago, and I could not get it working. And my OpenClaw got it going in like 10 minutes. It's insane. Yeah. Right? So now and you can do this obviously for multiple competitors. You could shorten that window to 14 days, whatever you want to do. So now it's building a list for me in a Google Sheet of all these stale rental listings with owner contact information. Let me tell you what I'm doing with that information. The email addresses are going right onto our prospect newsletter list. The addresses are going right into our direct mail list. They're now going to get our rent magazine and our postcard flow, right? And the warm leads are going right into my BDM's Lead Simple account so that she can make a phone call and say, hey, I see that you've got a rental property. Are you having any trouble with leasing? Well, we know they are because they have a stale listing. So that opens the door to a great conversation. So that's an example of AI solving our bottleneck in a way that I think is going to move the needle for us.
Yeah, I love that example. Well, first of all, it's funny that you use that specific example because that's something we do to go and find deals from like a
Yeah.
prospecting standpoint. You're prospecting for property management clients, we're prospecting for a motivated seller.
Yeah.
And it's like, you got this bad PM that's not doing a good job leasing your unit. Would you want to sell your building?
Same target
Um,
demographic. Yeah.
exactly. But I think what you hit on kind of like high level conceptually is like it's a recurring task that's research oriented that is probably something that you would have an entry level type of employee working on, right? Just kind of some broad categorizations in terms of what type of work that is. And I think that generally speaking, like at least in our business, that's what we're looking to continue to try to automate through some type of AI platform, right? And but the constraint thing is huge too, because the amount of folks that I hear in multifamily real estate specifically that are like, I'm using ChatGPT or Claude or whatever the tool might be, Manus, to underwrite deals, to do market research. And I'm like, well, that if you're not getting any deal flow, it doesn't matter, right? So you condense the amount of time that you're taking to underwrite a deal from 30 minutes to 5. Frankly, you're not even getting that much more information about, through using AI. You already know if that street's good or not. Now you're being told again by a more
Yeah.
sophisticated tool that it's a good street. Helped you get the rent roll into Excel from a PDF. But like you're not looking at enough deals for that to really be something that moves the needle within your business. And my just tip for the listeners is the challenge, at least for the multifamily real estate folks, and it's a challenge for all small business owners fundamentally, it's staying top of mind with the folks that you may work with in your marketplace. And an easy way to do that is to consistently produce some type of content so that you can scalably reach more people, whether that's an email newsletter, whether that's creating content on LinkedIn or social or whatever. It's time consuming to create content. Set up some recurring task with some type of AI platform we use relay.app to do this for a little bit, which is a very simplistic AI workflow tool that you can, subscribe to for 30, $40 a month. And we're just getting teed up with listings, or not listings, but news stories to help populate a very kind of hyper local value add newsletter
That's
that we
great.
can send out to owners. Or you could have it, integrate it with your Gmail or something along those lines, or your CRM. Have it search throughout your CRM for the context that you haven't spoken with in a long time. Have it actually look up the context of the last discussion you had and just tee up a sample email, draft it in your inbox, and remind you to
Yeah. I
send it
love
out,
that.
right? And it's like it's stuff that's low hanging, right? And a lot of people are like, oh, I kind of do that anyways. But I think the repetitive stuff that's like the death by a thousand cuts, when you stack all of this work onto your plate, if you are the one doing it yourself, that's really easy to get off your plate, right? And I think that's kind of the needle moving stuff for most folks, right? As you
Yeah.
described.
I think, consistency is really the key with this stuff. So I'm a big newsletter guy, right? I have this property management newsletter I've been writing for years. It's got 20,000 subscribers. We have like a 70 to 75% open rate. It's bonkers. And that really only works when you're consistent with it. And there's no reason you can't do that in your own local market. In fact, we have a different, totally separate newsletter that's specific to our rental owners and prospective clients. And again, you have to be consistent with it. And so if the AI tools are going to help you be consistent by either drafting it or reminding you or researching for you, to me, that's all great. And like, yeah, for most of us, new business is the constraint. Let's be real, right?
Yeah.
We're not operating a business that's so overwhelmed with demand that we can't keep up, right? That's the dream. That'd be amazing. But most of us need new customers, whether that's deals, or new rental owners or whatever. And so, yeah, AI tools applied in that area, sales, marketing, prospecting, researching, content, that is a big deal. And being consistent with content, I can tell you, is life-changing. If you can find a way, if you can find your groove, your platform that you like, and you can show up authentically there as yourself with your own face, name, and own identity, and you can do that consistently for a couple years, your life will change for sure. The challenge is it's really hard. Everyone can post on Facebook once a day for 2 weeks, but to do it for 2 years is a different level. And so if you can find AI tools that can help you do that, I definitely encourage that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that, the last note on this is I think a lot of folks, when they are reading about how AI is changing the business landscape, naturally end up reading about how large organizations are implementing it, which I think is obviously relevant and important for us to understand. But I think the objective of very broadly speaking, a Fortune 500 company, as they adopt AI, is to increase the efficiency of the operations of their business, to minimize their cost structure, to maximize their bottom line,
Yeah.
versus them using it as a tool to grow the top of the funnel. This is just my anecdotal opinion in terms of what I've consumed. Whereas as a small business owner, there's only so many incremental results you can generate from increasing the efficiency of your business. While that's obviously important, naturally, I think you're going to see such an outsized output if you spend your time optimizing, your time investment in the business as the business owner, and then your adoption of AI to growing the pie itself,
Yeah.
which I think is a little bit of a mindset change.
So it turns out that for a different way of thinking about a constraint in a small business is the constraint of the owner's time. So for most of us, our own time is in fact a huge constraint. It's like a one click up, right? Like if I had more time, I could attack the actual constraint in the business. But if I don't have any time to do that, then that is the constraint.
Yeah.
So again, tools around personal productivity specific to the owner or operator of the business, those I think are valuable. And, you asked for examples. I'll give you one that I use a lot right now. It's called Granola. I think it's granola.ai. But it's one of all these note-taking apps that like
Otter,
join your Zoom meetings and stuff, like Fireflies and Fathom and everything. I used Fathom for years. It's a good product. But I started to really hate how it always had the black box in all my meetings. And like, for some reason that started to really annoy me. And I also, I noticed it would have like the full recording of the video. And I'm like, I don't really need the video. Like, I'm not going to go watch the video. What I need is the transcript. I need to know and like the action items. So anyway, Granola is a newer product. It runs on your desktop or your laptop. You don't have to run it in the meeting. And so it can record not only any Zoom meeting that you're on, but any meeting that you have in person or on a cell phone. Like you just pull it up on your phone or on your computer and turn it on, and it will record the meeting and transcribe the notes and then give you a summary of the meeting. And the whole interface is just really slick. So I don't know. I've been really enjoying it, and it's taken over for me, replacing like these Fireflies and these Fathom tools. So that's one AI tool that I've been using a lot. It's pretty cool. You can ask it questions about the meeting. So like it's as if somebody was in the meeting with you, like literally taking notes, and then you could go to that person and be like, hey, what was the general vibe? Or what did this person say that one time? Like you can query it like you would kind of like a stenographer or something. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's great. I'm gonna have to go check that out. All right, to close here, because I know we're kind of coming up on time, and this may be a beefier question for you. I was gonna say 3 trends that you're, keeping an eye on throughout the remainder of 2026 within the property management business, specifically as a PM business owner, someone who's going out there and growing the PM business, and some amount of your time is also focused on making sure that the property management team is doing a good job of actually tactically managing the properties. But just high level, broadly speaking, couple of trends, few trends that you're keeping an eye on within the property management industry for the next, call it 9, 10 months.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first one for me is AI search results. So we're all very familiar with SEO and Google Business and paid ads and how do you show up on the internet for people who are looking for a property management company or how to sell their home or whatever it is. We just partnered again with Harris Poll to do a survey of rental property owners. So Jordan Muela and I do this every year or two. So Harris Poll, we commissioned them to survey over 500 rental owners several weeks ago to ask them all kinds of questions about owning a rental property and property management. So we have the results back. The final report is going to be called the PM Trends Report 2026. It'll be coming out in a couple months. So we're pulling all this data together and making the report. One of the fascinating things that came out of this report is we asked rental owners, did you use AI search? Did you use an AI tool to help you find or select a property manager last time you searched for one? And then we also asked them, are you going to use an AI tool like ChatGPT to help you find or evaluate a property manager in the future? And it came back that like 80% of respondents said they're going to use AI to help find their next property manager.
Well,
It's insane. And so it's become clear that it's very important that your company and your name show up when somebody asks ChatGPT, tell me, I own a duplex in Springfield, Missouri. I'm interested in finding a property manager. Who should I be talking to? Right? And it's going to spit back 3 results or whatever. How do you show up there? How do you make sure your company shows up in those search results? I don't have all the answers. I just know that this is going to be a big area of focus for our industry and for, property management business owners and for real estate business owners. So this is a big deal because all that work we did to show up in Google, people are just opening ChatGPT and asking the same question. And so you got to now, this is the new game, is how do we show up in not only ChatGPT, but all of the other AI tools that people are using. So that's the first one. I don't know if you've thought much about this or what do you think about that, but
we have, and we got to be doing more to make sure that we are right. I think we've followed the same playbook. I think a lot of small businesses have, whether they're in real estate or not, where it's do a really good job at asking for Google reviews after clients have a good experience, and
yeah,
we're the most highly reviewed property management company in our geographical market, which is great. That helps. We try to do some on the SEO side on the website, put up some articles, put up some blogs. Sure, that helps. But it's really been kind of a bootlegged process in that we kind of know generally what we should be focusing on, but we haven't focused that effort specifically to what you're describing, which is something that we're probably going to need to spend more time thinking about throughout the rest of this year for sure.
and part of the challenge is just nobody really knows what to do. I mean, these
Yeah.
models are changing so fast, and people for a while it was like, oh, it's Reddit. They're really citing Reddit in all of their results. You got to get on Reddit and have people saying good things about your management company, and then it's like now I hear people saying, oh, it's BBB. You got to get on the BBB. Like, who knows, right? So it's a big challenge. So look to stay, in tune with that. Another big trend that I'm seeing right now is community. It seems like every other week, some PM vendor is launching a community, or whether it's free or paid or whatever. And, this is a topic that's near and dear to me with Crane. So we launched Crane about 2.5 years ago now. And it's been really fun to see that grow. Like we have over 200 members in there now. Average company size is about 600 doors. We just did a survey of members. And so this is a place for experts and operators to hang out around the water cooler and share best practices, mastermind, commiserate, celebrate, and just kind of have a tribe, because anyone who owns a business knows it can be pretty lonely, especially if you don't have a business partner. I've had a great business partner all along, which has been fabulous. But even then, sometimes you feel like, well, he kind of does different things in the business than I do. He doesn't really get it. Like, I need to talk to other people who are dealing with this. So that's been big. And I think more and more folks are kind of waking up to the opportunity around community, both the opportunity to get plugged into a community and benefit that way, but also the opportunity to start and run a community. There's a bunch of benefits there too. So I'm very keyed into it. I'm looking always like, how can we make Crane as valuable as possible for the members? Our North Star is member value. My partner in that business also owns a management company. So we're in it every day. We're running management companies. And so we have kind of a cheat code in our ability to know what's going to be valuable for members, because we are operators ourselves. So that's been a good deal. And I think, if you have the opportunity to get plugged into a community of people doing what you're doing, that is a game changer and can shortcut your journey by years, literal years, just from having that one conversation or taking that one trip or getting on that one mastermind call. You can read a lot and you can listen to podcasts, but the ability to just directly interface with someone who's literally done what you're doing, right? Picture managing 400 doors and you're talking to a guy who's managing 800. Like, he knows how to do what you're trying to do. So why not just kind of chat with him and get the answers directly?
100%. And I think specifically right now, when it's just it's continually shocking to me how quickly the landscape is changing as it relates to best practices, tools, areas of
Hmm.
focus, specific to real estate. I mean, even things like, we didn't even talk about this in our conversation, but like the continued politicization of rental housing
Yeah.
and how quickly different laws are being passed, even not passed, but proposed, and maybe how to stay ahead of this and how to think about where you should protect yourselves within your own business. Like there's a lot of stuff that's changing right now at a speed that's far more rapid than any time that I've been in the business, which, I got into this a couple of years after you back in 2016. But between 2016 and 2022, not much changed except for COVID and the market getting a little hotter. Between 2022 and 2026, I mean, even really just the last 2 years, call it 24 to 26, the rate of change has been so significant from a how you run any business, period, whether it's global talent, whether it's AI, whether it's all of these
Yeah.
different things, that it's really hard to keep up if you don't have a cultivated network of folks who are running the same, running on the same road as you are. So I echo that. I think I've unlocked the biggest gains in our business from like a multifamily acquisitions, operations, asset management business when I've really spent more time, whether it's local networking events, national conference related networking events, or paid groups. Like
Yep.
the more time I'm spending doing that, the better I feel about the decisions that I'm making within the business myself. So I think that's a good note to end on here, specifically for the
Awesome.
folks who feel like they're getting left behind with all the stuff that's happening.
Yeah.
It's easy to change that. That all being said, where can folks learn more about you, Crane, get
Yeah.
involved in whatever you got going on here?
Yeah, so Crane actually, we only open up for new members twice a year. We try and keep it pretty exclusive and we're really careful about, the quality of the membership. And so we actually have an application window opening up here very shortly. So if you go to joincrane.co, you'll either see like a countdown until we open and you can join the wait list, or we may actually be open as you're listening to this if it's the beginning of April. So take a look and you can get on the waiting list. You'll get on our newsletter there where we share kind of stuff that's going on in the community and different things from the broader industry. If you want to jump on my kind of primary newsletter, if you just go to peterlohmann.com, you can sign up there. There'll be a pop-up probably or like a place to put in your email. I do a twice a week newsletter all about property management, covering news from the broader industry or just stuff that we're experimenting with in my company. So, yeah.
Love it. Great episode, man. Appreciate the time. Look forward to chatting again soon.
All right. Thanks, Axel. We'll see you next time.